It's Sports by the Book at the South Point Studio. Here's Jeff Parles.
Welcome back in. Sports by the Book is the show. South Point Studios, the site. I'm Jeff Parles. Alex White is alongside. I have a lot of balloons behind me, and I wouldn't wish the smell of it on anyone. That's all I'll say.
It is very
That
potent.
must be hard of smelling.
It's potent. It's potent.
Okay.
At least right here.
Okay.
It is potent. Chris Andrews is here. We have a Sweet 16 set with a very limited amount of upsets.
Yeah, I know.
To say the very least. Very limited amount of dogs even covering over the weekend as well. We'll say if you had Oregon, you deserve better. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But Chris, it was an unbelievably successful weekend across property, behind the counter. Even if the bettors got the better of you for a day or two, it was still an incredible weekend all the way around.
We squeezed out a little bit of a profit, not much. Thursday was fantastic.
Yeah.
Friday was like, okay. Saturday, we got murdered. And Sunday, we just had a lot of stuff running, from Saturday. But we again, squeezed out a very small profit on Sunday. But, I mean, it's hard to do with so many favorites covering and, money line play and money line parlays are just such a big part of today's betting menu. It was hard to do anything. But, listen, I ran some numbers this morning. We did more in the first 4 days of the tournament than we did in the Super Bowl game. Now, if you add in the props, it's still pretty darn close.
Woo.
But didn't pass it. But I'm sure by the time the tournament's over, and by then we'll be adding in the women's tournament, and the NIT, and the CIT, and what's the other one? Is that it?
CBI,
CIT,
Okay,
NIT. Yeah, there's 4 now.
Yeah, that'll easily far surpass the Super Bowl.
Is that unusual, or is this?
No, the last couple of years, that's
Okay.
the way it's been. Although this first 4 days was the biggest first 4
Wow.
days we've ever had. It was fantastic. And of course, when I go see Michael Gaughan, I'm going to tell him it's because of the studio, the shows. I mean,
100%.
What else would you think?
Well, and I will say, just being on property for however long it was on Thursday, I guess I was here for 13 and a half hours when it was all
So was I.
said. No, and then Friday deep into the night, Saturday as well. I mean, and then yesterday, even without the party, the crowds were still very
Yeah.
good right behind us. I mean, this was the place to be for the first weekend of the NCAA tournament.
I got to say, all the messages on Twitter and other social media were all so positive, which makes me happy, makes Michael Gaughan happy, and the rest of the team here happy. So I think we really did a terrific job all the way around. My portion of that is just really doing what I always do, is book the games. But you get like the guys at the convention center and catering and all the porters all the way down the line. I mean, just everybody did a fantastic job, and they should all be very proud of themselves.
But just to have the betting options upstairs as well is just so awesome. What year is that for that party up there now?
For that particular party, 2 years.
2 years.
I mean,
okay.
we've had it in some other spots, and it's just grown so much. We finally had to put it in the exhibit hall. I mean, we used to do it in some of the convention rooms, the smaller. I mean, they weren't that small. They had like
Still pretty
1,200
big,
people.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, but we just outgrew those, and we had to go to like additional rooms like across the way and blah blah blah. So finally, we decided let's just put it in there. And I was not crazy about it at first because listen, you guys all been to ball games. If you're in a big arena and there's 20,000 people there, at an arena, it's great. If you go to a football stadium and there's 20,000 people there, it's like a morgue.
Mhm.
So I didn't want to have that sort of an effect. But, I'm the first to admit I was wrong. I'm very happy that I was wrong because we filled that room up. And this year we had more people than we did last year. So I don't know if we're going to keep growing. I don't know where we put anybody else, to tell you the truth.
Open another.
Get another convention area?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm talking to Michael Gaughan about that.
Go downstairs, put them in the meeting rooms. Also, give I mean, it was Friday especially. Thursday it was full.
Yeah.
By about that. Well, honestly, you really heard it because it was really of the 3 days the best individual slate was when Florida and Colorado were duking it out.
Oh, yeah.
202 total points.
Yeah, 102,
and Auburn
100,
was
yeah.
getting upset by Yale, which,
Yeah.
in retrospect, I know everyone will point to Oakland. Yale beating Auburn was a bigger upset when it was all said and done.
What day was the Oakland game?
That was Thursday evening. That was
Everybody told me, and I could, because I wasn't
It was
upstairs at
loud
the
up
time.
there.
I was here. The biggest uproar in the history of the South Point, bigger than Super Bowl, NBA Finals, the Kentucky Derby, you name it. When they got the first to 15, and needless to say, we got hammered pretty good on that one. So, but that's the way
first
it
to
goes.
15 outright as well as a huge die. I mean, there was a lot of a lot of noise up there, but it was a great time.
A lot of fun.
Food was great. The beverages were always good as always.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a
Food
fun
specials were fantastic.
Yes,
They
they were.
were.
I know you and
meatball
I.
sub on Saturday.
You
was
and I
great.
had the meatball sub. We also had the po' boy, the shrimp po' boy the one day. That was pretty good. I think we did it. And we don't gouge people on prices.
Prices are great.
We send that out. I mean, listen, I know the Michael Gaughan formula. He wants a lot of traffic. He wants a lot of people. He wants loyal customers. And by the way, just look around at this joint. It seems to have worked. And every once in a while, he'll complain, geez, I can't believe we blew all this. Michael, it seems like you're okay. And we kind of laughed. Yeah, I know.
Going to this weekend now.
Yeah.
The beginning of the minus 105.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
On all sides. That's available both at the counter and the app, correct? Or is it just
not on the app, but it is available at the counter and on the kiosks.
Okay, counter. So on property.
You got to be on property.
On property.
That's Michael Gaughan too, and I'm with him 100%.
So minus 105 juice, single bet, straight bets only, no parlays.
They're in betting already.
But
early this morning, I had a couple guys, a couple of 10-dimers come in, and here we go.
And there's special numbers for those written on here on the
exactly.
sheet. Very easy to follow. So
yeah, and unfortunately, it doesn't come on Dawn Best or the other ones. So I wish it did. Say at 105.
Well, then people would it would be even more well publicized.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would. So we're going to try to publicize as much as we can.
All the way through the championship game.
Yep.
For the NCAA tournament, minus 105 juice on property.
All right.
About 15 paces from us here.
Yeah.
Those kiosks over by Del Mar.
And the Rampart.
And the Rampart as well. Yep.
Where you can run into Kaluch.
Yep.
There you go. Thank you.
Very good, everybody.
And also down in Mesquite, we have our two places down there, Virgin River and the Casablanca.
What has the action been so far on these Sweet 16?
Oh, geez. Now you're asking me the hard questions. Give me that. Well, we haven't had much yet, but what do we open? I think we opened. We had Iowa State 2, then we went to 2.5, and then they took the 2.5. Got some money on Connecticut. Boy, they look pretty
10
good.
10 to 11 on UConn. Yep.
Boy, they look pretty good. They bet me Clemson too. Is that 7? I got there. Jeff?
7.5 now on
7.5. I think they went to 7 and back to 7.5. And Creighton. What am I running Creighton, Jeff?
Creighton, you're 3.
Okay, yeah. So
they're betting Purdue also from 4.5 to 5.5.
Yeah, so they're betting Purdue. They bet Tennessee. I don't think I moved the Marquette or the Duke games. Am I running 6.5 and 4?
4 and 6.5.
Yeah, those two haven't moved.
Yeah,
we've had some totals move. We had some money line play. I can't remember all of them. Yeah, but we've been busy already this morning, and a lot of people cashing tickets. Unfortunately, but a lot of people cashing tickets, and sending it back in. That's what we're all about here.
It'll be interesting to see how this weekend goes because there were so many favorites, but now these are going to be closer games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, smaller spreads here, so it'll be interesting to see how the seeds do moving forward from here.
Yeah, we got one game that's 10, one game that's 7.5. All the rest are just a couple of buckets here and there.
Well, there's only one double digit left.
Yeah,
and it's a Power 5 team in NC State.
Yeah.
There's the only other one north of a 5 is Clemson, another ACC team.
Yeah.
So
isn't it funny how it works, though, Jeff? I mean, all year we've been talking how great the Big 12 is, and they still got 2 teams involved. And we were knocking the ACC, even Duke. I mean, North Carolina, I think we all knew North Carolina was pretty
Duke
good.
had their flaws.
Yeah, Duke had a lot of flaws, but now the ACC's come along pretty good. I hear the Pitt people, believe me, I got them on my thread from back home. Pitt should have been in the tournament, which I think they probably should have been.
Yeah, I'll give – look, NC State's just riding the wave right now, and they also were look, sometimes these runs, you get lucky where you drew a 14 seed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the nature of this tournament. And NC State, it took them overtime, but they took advantage.
They still got, 7 straight one-and-done elimination games?
They've won 7 straight.
Yeah.
And Kevin Keats now has an extra 2 years and a couple $1 million.
I know he made a couple $1 million. That's more than anybody made out of the South Point, fortunately.
Yeah.
So.
And then for Clemson, look, I got to give Clemson their due. I thought this was a team that was royally overseeded.
I would have said the same thing.
And they were an underdog against the 11th seed, and they came out and just annihilated New Mexico. And look, maybe I think Clemson was a little fortunate. Baylor started their comeback a little late, and Baylor compounded it by missing free throws down the stretch.
Yeah.
But hey, you still beat a team that I thought was one of the 8 most talented in the country in around 32.
Good, yeah. Can I tell you, too, that Houston did everything in their power to blow that game yesterday?
That was one of the most amazing things I can remember in the tournament, because normally when you think of collapses like that, now Houston ended up surviving in overtime against A&M, you normally think about teams that are poorly coached. Houston is not poorly coached.
Sampson's done a great job. It's funny, I was texting with a friend of ours during that game, Chris Felica.
Yep.
You know, and I that was one favorite that I needed to win and cover. And, it was by 13 with a minute and a half, 2 minutes to play.
Yeah.
And he's texting me, "How you feeling good about this one?" "Yeah, I feel pretty good." Boom, there goes the collapse. That's the way it goes,
No, it's
Anyway, that's about all for me. I know you got Danny Burke waiting in the wings. Hello, Danny. I don't know if you can hear me. Doesn't look like he can.
Hey, he smiled. He hears.
Hello, Danny.
But I will say, Chris, just before we let you go, I know people will complain about the lack of upsets or that. I think that's nonsense. These matchups that we have, where Iowa State, Illinois was one that we were hoping to get before the tournament. Great game. Creighton and Tennessee on Friday night. Incredible game. Creighton very lucky to survive against Oregon. I mean, the way Gonzaga played those first 2 rounds.
I was going to say,
against Purdue. I'm a little bit surprised that the bettors are coming in on Purdue with the way Gonzaga looked. Now, is there something to do with this opponent's way better than those first 2 teams? Yes, of course. But, boy, I mean, if Gonzaga shoots like they did in those 2 games, it's hard to even see anyone other than maybe Connecticut taking them out at this point.
Well, it's funny. I hear certain guys, I'll tell you off camera, that knock Mark Few. I'm like, how can you knock Mark Few? He's done such a great job.
Crazy.
And I mean, this team just got better and better and better as the year wore on. I think I said on Frank's show, I can't remember, maybe in this show, my wife, she picked against Gonzaga. She said, "You told me Gonzaga wasn't very good." "Oh, I didn't think they were very good. I thought they were bad." But that's the way it goes. They just got better and better all year. So your dad actually pointed out like a month ago, I guess, something like that.
Yeah, well, it was actually
Maybe
January.
that long ago.
Matt and I, because it was right around my birthday.
Good for him.
And I remember Matt and I kind of looked
Your
at each other.
Your dad's been around the block once or twice.
Is he crazy? Is he talking about this Gonzaga? Yeah.
I'd have said the same thing, that he's crazy. Not that they're going to gel, but they definitely have gelled. They look pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, a dominant second half against Kansas. Kansas was winning that game at halftime as well. And then just got demolished in the second half. And then the McNeese team that I thought was pretty good, just done DOA basically in that game against Gonzaga.
Yeah, boy, Kansas really, the lack of depth really showed. I don't know. But, okay,
have a lot of great games coming.
We have a lot of great games. We're going to have a fun week, and I'm sure I'll see you guys during the course of the week.
And then we got baseball starting.
Oh,
and
man,
it's almost Stanley Cup playoff time and NBA. So
we'll have some more props. We'll have some tomorrow, and then some more come Wednesday or Thursday. Probably Wednesday, because Thursday we're going to be busy with baseball.
Okay.
So we'll get some more props coming. So hopefully we'll have a fun week.
All right.
All right, guys.
The Dodger Yankee UConn moneyline parlay. Probably be the most popular parlay on Thursday, Chris.
I'll have to hear from Michael going every time we lose. What did the Dodgers and Yankees win again? Yeah, they probably. Yeah, you got it,
Chris. Thank you very much.
All right, guys, have fun. See you later.
Absolutely, Chris Andrews, everyone. We're gonna take a quick break. When we get back, Danny Burke joins us on the other side, talking NBA, college hoops, some baseball. We got it all with DB next. Sports by the Book.
Once you've satisfied your hunger, get ready for more of the hottest casino games in Vegas. Our 24-hour 30-table non-smoking poker room proudly hosts all the most popular poker games with a variety of betting limits. Visit the poker room for a schedule of daily tournaments. Whether you're going to hold 'em or fold 'em, the best place for poker is at South Point Casino. You'll notice that our craps tables are usually the loudest in the casino. If you've never played, join one of our free craps lessons to find out what makes this game so exciting. Check with the craps dealer for schedules and give it a roll. Bingo is also an exciting way to spend your time. We offer 7 sessions of bingo every day. And each session includes a cash ball jackpot, 12 bingo games, a progressive double action game, and a $10,000 bonus coverall. Electronic units are available. If you haven't played bingo with us, give it a try today. Guests can also get in on the action at our one-of-a-kind race and sports books. 2 separate rooms designed to maximize your experience and comfort. Our sports book, with over 400 seats, puts you right in the middle of the action, 24 hours a day. The friendly ticket writers are happy to help, and it's conveniently located next to the famous Del Mar Deli, where you'll find supersized portions of delicious deli items like roast beef, pastrami, and Reuben sandwiches, or soups, salads, and pizza, plus spectacular desserts fit for a king. And right next door is the race book, over 150 seats, each with its own TV screen. There are 16 interactive player terminals, so you can bet right from your seat.
Welcome back in Sports by the Book, South Point Studio. I'm Jeff Parles, Alex White alongside. Big thanks to Chris. I'm pointing to an empty chair. Big thanks to Chris Andrews for joining us as well. And now, in a Monday spot this week, our guy Danny Burke joins us. Danny, first off, how are you, man? It was a very interesting weekend in the madness, to say the very least, right?
Yeah, I've had better March Madnesses, to say the least. And I know you and I were talking a little bit earlier in the day, and it just seems like everybody got beat up. It's really remarkable because, you know, some of these pro bettors that us three always communicate with, they seem like they got their butts kicked. Behind the counter, they got their butts kicked in certain games. And, you know, if you're all over the favorite and going ultimate public play the entire time, I suppose you did well. But even still, some of the people like my friends who I know who you usually go that way, seems like they also got their butts kicked. So it hasn't been the best March Madness opening couple rounds, to say the least. Definitely hoping for a better result heading into the Sweet 16 and beyond.
So let's dive in. Let's start with the East region, okay? We'll get to UConn in a little bit because demolition derby so far for the Huskies. They've covered their last 8 tournament games now, and they've done it by significant margin. We'll get to them in a minute, but I want to start with Illinois and Iowa State, which for Thursday, and look, Alabama, North Carolina's got a whole bunch of intrigue. UConn is UConn. Arizona's playing almost a home game in L.A. against Clemson. Illinois, Iowa State is as good of a game that's left in this field. And Iowa State, I did it with their offense in game 1, which was a little bit perplexing. Game 2, ugly for the most part in the first half. And then they put the defensive display on in the second half. Really put the clamps down on Wazoo. Very impressive. Illinois, look, bad start against Moorhead. Dominated the last 20 minutes of that game. Duquesne game, didn't even give Duquesne a chance. That game was over from the get-go. And now here we are in a much more even matchup. Iowa State's 2 against the Illini here, Danny, with a total of 146.
Yeah, look, I heard you guys talking about this game with Chris briefly and how they got up to 2.5 and then back down to 2. Out in my neck of the woods here in Illinois, there's a couple stragglers that are posting 2 in the hook, but again, consensus seems to be at that flat 2. I'm going to be looking toward the Fighting Illini here, and it's shocking that I'm saying that for a couple of reasons. One, because I didn't really have that much confidence in this team in general this season, I suppose. I kind of thought they were a little overhyped. And then 2, the fact that they even made it this far, because I remember when you and I were talking last week, I had them not even advancing to this point in the tournament, certainly going a little bit out of the way to look for an upset. But really, this Fighting Illini squad and kind of what was on display against Moorhead in that first game make a lot of these outings harder than they need to be, right? Like they'll play down to their competition and make it so much more difficult than it needs to be heading into half number 2. Now, in that game, as you alluded to against Duquesne, I mean, it was just an absolute beating from start to finish. And you're not expecting that to occur against Iowa State, but you really can't get into too much of a deficit. And it's not that I'm saying that because I'm expecting the Cyclones to just be scoring at will, but we know how great this defense is of Iowa State. Bart Torvik has them ranked second in adjusted defensive efficiency, clashing heads with the second-ranked team in offensive efficiency in the Fighting Illini. But the reason that I gravitate toward Illinois, Jeff, is because a difference maker in this game with Terrence Shannon Jr. I mean, he is the X factor who gets you over the hump when you have a lot of similar categories here. When you have a great offense versus a great defense, who can get you that much needed bucket in clutch time, in times when you're in a drought, something to just at least get to the free throw line and just get it the hard way, whatever it may be. That's what he presents that really isn't featured on a lot of teams, but in particular on Iowa State. So in this spot, I do think the X factor of that offensive piece is going to be enough to overcome what's a fantastic defense in Iowa State. And they're also allowing opponents to chuck up a ton of threes. So if Illinois can be serviceable enough from deep, again, that should be enough to maybe separate the gap to where Iowa State's offense won't be able to do enough to keep up close with the Fighting Illini. So because I'm catching 2.5, I got to take it with Illinois. I'm embracing the possibility of being absolutely disappointed after I've been on the opposite side of Illinois for so long, but I'm going to trust them here. I know you know how that feeling goes, Jeff, but that's what I'm thinking for that matchup.
Now, Danny, let's stay in that region. Jeff just brought up UConn and what we've seen from them really the last 5 games, the 3 Big East tournament games, and then these first 2 round. One of the biggest spreads on the board. They are a 10.5-point favorite, line about 136 for the total. Rematch of last year's championship game here against SDSU, who has been a little up and down this season, but has looked very good in the tournament. Do you like anything in this game?
You know, it's hard not to lean toward the Huskies, and that would be the only side I would want to be on. And it's not just because of how purely dominant they are and thinking San Diego State has no chance. I just still think that this team is the best that's available. And San Diego State, yes, returning some of these veteran players that were a part of that championship game, but it's not as good of an Aztec team. You still have a tough defense. Yes, that's going to be present, but the offense is not going to be capable of keeping up with what UConn has. And the number's gotten a little bit higher than I wanted it to be. If it was at the flat 10, which I know we're seeing, pretty much 11s out there, then I'd look toward laying it with UConn, and I wouldn't expect it to come back down to 10. And it's hard to sit here and go, you know what, I'm going to wait for a better in-game number because there's a very real chance it's not going to occur. That's how great this Huskies team is. Just on paper, they're just unbelievable. First in adjusted offensive efficiency at Bart Torvik, 9th in terms of the defense, 4th in effective field goal percentage offensively, 3rd defensively. You look at some of San Diego State's number, they're 221st in effective field goal percentage, 72nd in adjusted offensive efficiency. So again, it's going to present one of those situations to where when UConn inevitably gets on this hot streak, probably early in the game, it's going to be too big of a hole for San Diego State to crawl up out of because they just don't have the talent offensively. They don't have the pure shooters, and UConn can kill you in both directions. So maybe I'll investigate a little bit further in the week some of these first half numbers so you get a tad bit more of a bargain with UConn, or you just kind of sit there and just really hope San Diego State can do something miraculous and give you a better in-game spot with the Huskies. But yeah, it's UConn or nothing for me.
Let's keep it on Thursday. Alabama and UNC. We've talked about it all year with Bama, even though it didn't play out yesterday because, as Charles Barkley correctly put, Grand Canyon played the stupidest basketball game he has ever seen, and I think he is right on that. Look, Bama got away with a bad shooting night yesterday. Mm-hmm. If Grand Canyon had a semblance of a plan, they probably would not have gotten away with it. Now to get UNC, where it seemed like everyone loved Michigan State on Saturday. I didn't understand that. And UNC won that game comfortably in a de facto home game. Now we are back in L.A. here. This is a pure neutral between these two teams that are based in the South. Danny, I can't bet any Alabama games pre-flop because, as I've told Alex all year long, Alabama's capable of beating anyone. They're capable of losing to anyone. Do you have anything here with a 173.5 which is far and away the highest total of the Sweet 16, which does not come as a shock.
Yeah, I mean, look, the total's the first thing that stands out to you, right? You got two teams that love to push the ball, 44th in adjusted tempo at Bart Torvik for UNC, 11th for Bama, a team that loves to fire from deep, and defensively coming in at 124th in adjusted defensive efficiency, UNC 20th in offensive adjusted efficiency. So UNC would be the first thing I would think of in this spot in terms of a side, right? But there, of course, is that discourse that UNC is not as good of a team as their ranking implies. And the market really is showing them this disrespect, i.e. that matchup against Michigan State. I was on the same side as you. I'm like, am I missing something here? Or is this just a complete overreaction to Michigan State winning in the Izzo and March narrative? Because I think a lot of us did like Michigan State in that first game. But then to just see them as such a short underdog against UNC in the second round, it just seemed insane. And the result really justified that. So UNC, again, kind of still in that question mark spot, only because if Alabama does catch fire from deep, UNC is not really an offense that throws it up from beyond the perimeter at a frequent rate. So we talk about getting out of these holes, and that would be my scare with backing the Tar Heels here, is that Alabama's offense maybe starts out hot right out of the gates, kind of like Michigan State did. And I could see this being an issue to where North Carolina actually finds it hard to limit Alabama's damage and then find struggle scoring down low themselves. So I've got nothing in this game. UNC gets the nod for me overall because, look, they do the fundamentals right. They're a great rebounding team. They're great at getting to the free throw line. They really limit the turnovers. But again, you can be shot out of a cannon and just have a great start if you're the Crimson Tide. And that's what makes it a little sketch to back this, or to go against this team, rather. So I agree with you. I know sometimes it seems like we're beating a dead horse going, wait for the in-game spot, wait for the in-game spot. But that's truly where I feel comfortable with Alabama and UNC here. And that's what I'm going to look to do. So I've got no action pre-flop for these two teams.
Great points, Danny. As always, I can't help but kind of root for UNC to make it through, and then Arizona, because I want to see that match, Caleb Love's old team to the new team. But let's talk about this Arizona matchup first, because now they have this red-hot Clemson team, 6 seed. No one really expected them to be here, but Arizona, we've got a 7.5-point favorite here, total 152. Do you like anything in this one?
It'd have to be Arizona or nothing here. I mean, Clemson just seems like they're playing way over their heads. And maybe it's just me being kind of a hater because I came on here saying I like New Mexico, and Clemson just made them look like a Division III team. But look, we give all the credit in the world to Clemson. Their defense has been outstanding. They hit big shots when they needed to in the first half against Baylor. Gave you a scare in half number 2. Baylor couldn't hit those free throws. That's what happens when we wager on these college kids, right? At some point, you're going to have to rely on them hitting free throws. A lot of times it doesn't happen. That was the case if you're on the side with Baylor. But Clemson is a squad that really likes to slow this down. 257th in adjusted tempo. Arizona, a team that can love to push the ball. Top 10 in adjusted offensive and defensive efficiency. They are for sure the better team here. Wonky things happen in the tournament all the time. But now that Clemson's going to have a few days off after they've had 2 very impressive games, I think the talent really is going to seep to the top here that favors Arizona. And also, Arizona, what do we know them to be? An amazing rebounding team. And Clemson's really had struggles rebounding the ball in these first 2 games. They've allowed about, 28 offensive rebounds in the first 2 games. They've only got 13 of their own. So I think the Wildcats are really going to punish them off the boards. Haven't made a play in this game, but again, it's Arizona or nothing for myself.
Danny, going to the Friday games, I'll give you the floor here. Here are the 4. Purdue's 5.5 against Gonzaga, but there's a lot of 5 out there as well. Tennessee is 3 against Creighton. There's some 2.5 out there as well. Marquette, 6.5 across the board against NC State. Houston, 4 across the board against Duke. Of those 4, which one jumps out right now here on Monday?
Yeah, I took a little piece of Creighton against Tennessee. This is a matchup. When you came on my podcast, we were talking about whoever wins this game, we believe to come out of that region. And I had in multiple different brackets, one of them Creighton winning the whole thing, the other Tennessee winning it, just in case the Volunteers did defeat the Blue Jays. But I do have more trust in Creighton and like that I'm catching 3 points in this situation. Creighton was very sloppy in that last game against Oregon. And you got to give the Ducks a lot of credit. And Dana Altman, we know, is a fantastic coach going against a former team, a lot of narrative in it. But the fact that Creighton was able to pull through despite all the BS that they put on themselves, mainly a lot of missed layups, this just proves to you that this team can overcome the adversity this year. Now, Tennessee still a tremendous defense themselves. They're third in adjusted defensive efficiency, but these are the type of games that you watch usually with Rick Barnes' team, and you see the defense do well, but it's a bend don't break, and then it's just hoping and praying some of these shots offensively go in the net, and that's going to be the difference here for me, because Creighton can kill you obviously offensively. They're 11th in adjusted offensive efficiency and still top 30 defensively, so they're not too far behind to where that side of the ball is a liability by any stretch of the imagination. Creighton shooting about 60% inside the perimeter, just absolutely outstanding numbers. Defensively, they're 18th at defending that range within the perimeter. From three-point, they're top 40, shooting over 36.5%. And they're also 7th in three-point rate. So the opportunities are there. They're cashing in on them frequently, and they can really limit their opponent's damage from deep. So because of the inabilities of Tennessee's offense still, and Creighton being pretty well balanced on both sides, I'm going to take the 3 for a little bit more of that security, but I do believe Creighton wins and advances.
Danny, just give me your thoughts, because I'm curious. You did a great breakdown with Clemson. Now I want to talk about NC State, who's had 7 do-or-die games to get to this point. But I know a lot of people aren't very high on this Marquette team. So do you have any feel for this game?
Yeah, I think he kind of put it appropriately, Alex. I mean, NC State's been on this incredible run. Yeah, 7 of these must-win games in a row, in the last 11 days. So we talk about riding these waves of momentum, and NC State is the perfect team to describe as doing just that in March. So now that you have several days off in between, this is going to hurt this NC State team, let's be honest. And despite them winning those first 2 games, it's not like it was in very impressive fashion, I guess you could say. There were moments in that Texas Tech game where it did look like the Raiders were going to come out on top. Yes, they came through in the second half, rather like the last, 8 minutes. And when you look at just the score, 80-67, a lot more comfortable than it actually was. And then against Oakland, of course, a game they easily could have lost. They end up winning in overtime. Now, I think the public's going to look at, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like you're going to look at this game and go, I'm catching this amount of points with DJ Burns and this NC State team. Marquette's been shaky. Of course, I'm going to take that. But yeah, Marquette didn't look great against Western Kentucky, but they found a way to pull through later stages of that game. And then against Colorado, only getting a 4-point win. Look, Colorado's a really good team. I know they had to fight their way into this tournament, but they are a very strong bunch. So even though it was only a 4-point win and it got a little dicey toward the end, I'm not going to let that steer my thoughts away from what this Marquette team is. And it's a team that has a consistent scorer and Kolek there who can come up big when you need him to. It's a defense under Shaka Smart that I want to put my weight on to rely on this time of year, especially against an NC State team that's been overperforming. So again, because it's Monday, I'm waiting to see where these markets go to. I haven't bet it, but more likely than not, I'll probably end up on the Golden Eagles. I think this is just a spot where we're getting a better price on them than we probably should if this game was taking place in any other situation, just because NC State has been riding that hot streak.
Danny, I want to go to the NBA real quick. Also, we'll probably have to talk about this tomorrow, but there is a pretty wild gambling story that just broke in the NBA. And it all comes back to Missouri, of course. So we'll dissect this tomorrow.
Does it have to do with your boy MPJ or what's going on?
You got the family right. You have the wrong brother though. But
okay.
Just the Woj and company at ESPN just broke the story, and it is it's a doozy. Let's just go with that, Danny. Let's just say there might be some long suspensions at best for the parties involved here. Let's go to base. Let's go to the NBA though, just in the regular set. See, I had the thought of Pete Rose in my head and wanted to go to baseball right away. Danny, everyone's been paying attention to college hoops conference championship week. Of course, 2 weeks ago, NCAA tournament. During those 2 weeks, under the radar to a lot of people, guess who's the number 1 seed again in the Western Conference? The defending champion Denver Nuggets, who, Danny, I know Boston's favored. I do get it. The East run for Boston conceivably should be easier than Denver's. But I think it's pretty inexcusable at this point that Denver is not the favorite across the board, where they just did it. They have a big advantage playing home games. And there's a non-zero chance that Boston's going to have to play Philly with a healthy Embiid in round one, which makes their run to the finals. Yes, should they beat Philadelphia in a 7-game series? Absolutely. But having to do 3 hard series in order to get to the final, as opposed to maybe 2, that's a big, big difference potentially with what Denver would have to go through to the West. Yes, I know LeBron, Luka, Sacramento possibly there, but Denver has proven they own the Lakers, and let's face it, they would beat anyone in their path if it's Dallas or Sacramento in a 1-8 pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, look, Denver has proven to us in the second half of the season that they're still the best team in the NBA. There's no denying that. And when you look back at some of the games where they've maybe seemed like they regressed or not at the top of their game, you have to remember this is inevitable after winning a championship. I don't care who you are. There's going to be a certain hangover, a certain lull to some extent. And you can get back to your form if you're the Nuggets. That's why we've seen it play so dominantly now, because it's getting to playoff time. It's time to really get into that extra gear. And Malone does a great job of getting his guys there. And that's why you can trust this team to turn it on when they need to. They have the veteran presence of these guys for the majority of the roster that were a part of that team last year. They know their roles. They understand it. We crack up at Michael Porter Jr., speaking of him and, his family. Like, MPJ doesn't really pass the ball too often. His defense, it's hit or miss. But he knows when it's time to kind of take a step back and not chuck things up left and right. Jamal Murray, when he comes on off the bench at the beginning of the fourth quarter, end of the third quarter, when Jokic then goes on the bench, Murray knows he needs to be the guys. And then those role players step up and keep things level while the Joker is out of this game. So everybody knows their role so perfectly that, again, when it gets to crunch time, they are the team you want to trust the most. And I came on here, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago talking about those exactas, and I had the Celtics over the Nuggets in one, the Celtics over the Clippers in the other. And the reason I did that is because knowing Boston would have home court advantage, thinking I'd get a better opportunity to hedge on the other team, meaning like the Nuggets. Who knows? I mean, if the Nuggets just completely dominate, maybe they'll be in that favorite position despite not having that home court advantage. But I'm feeling great about that bet involving Denver. And if anybody's out there trying to convince you some other team has a better case, even with price factored into it, I don't really think there's that much of a case to be made, because I'll be putting my money on Denver, even if you're saying the Clippers are getting hot at the right time, which they're not. They're 8-9 since the All-Star break. They only have one win against a team with an above 500 record. That's something that people may have missed on as of late. And it's just that nobody else is really impressing you too much out of the West that really has you infatuated with them over the Nuggets. Yes, the Timberwolves have been an exciting team, but they're banged up, and I still just don't want to have to put that much confidence in this Minnesota team when it comes to crunch time in these big spots. So I'm kind of getting around in the circle here, but Jeff, you're right. People should know that Denver, yes, best team in the league. Yes, Boston is number 2. If you have to choose between the two, it's got to be Denver. There's no question.
All 3 of those teams you just brought up are playing tonight. We've got Boston playing at Atlanta. We've got Denver hosting Memphis. And then the Clippers coming off a back-to-back night. They lost to the Sixers last night, but they will host the Pacers, who also played last night. So any of those jump out to you? Or, I mean, there's 11 games on the board if you want to go to a different one.
No, so I did make a couple bets in the NBA tonight, Alex. We'll start with the Sacramento game. So I had the Sixers and the Kings. I did a player prop in that spot. I went with Tobias Harris over 17.5 points in that matchup. So the reason that I targeted Tobias Harris is because, as you guys know, I like to look at where these teams may be struggling, maybe having great success at in terms of the defensive side. And Sacramento's not really a powerful defense by any stretch of the imagination, in particular at mid-range. They're allowing a majority of their opponents' shot attempts to come from mid-range, and their opponents are knocking down a healthy amount. Tobias Harris is taking the most shot attempts from mid-range, and specifically within that mid-range territory from short mid-range, he's making about 45% of those looks. He already dropped 37 on this team once before. No, that doesn't mean you blindly bet it here, but because the defensive lapses presented by Sacramento Sacramento back up that he should have better scoring efforts against his team, and the numbers only at 17.5, yeah, I think that sets up for a pretty viable path to backing Tobias Harris on an offense that desperately needs scoring. So Tobias is there to fill that void. And you kind of look at some other tendencies he's had against teams who have similar struggles, because the Kings are like 27th at allowing shots from mid-range and defending it. You look at other teams that present that same weakness of their defense. Golden State was one of them. The Pacers is another. And he's had very good performances of 20-plus points against both of those squads. I'm not going to go down the whole list, but this is the matchup that Tobias prefers. They need him in this spot, in this tough road trip, to step up as that veteran, reliable offensive source. And I think, again, 17.5 is a little bit of a bargain. I thought it would have been more at about 19.5. So I'll take my chances on the over with Harris.
All right, let's go to baseball. Apparently the season started last week in the middle of the night, but for 28 teams.
Nobody knew.
Yeah, no one. Well, the Ohtani story is the only thing that matters right now. But 28 other teams will get in action this week, so it's a good time, Danny, to go through some futures here. And I'm going to tell you, I want to start with your season win total under ones real quick, because one of them I'm very interested to hear your reasoning for, and that's the defending world champion Rangers, that you like under 89.5. Mm-hmm. The other one I love and agree with you, and will be rooting very hard for it to be the case. I know you will be, not only just for the sake of your wallet, but for the sake of your favorite team as well. Tell us why you like the Cardinals under 85.5 and why you like the Rangers under 89.5.
Yeah, let's start with the Cardinals here. So I know this number's been varying anywhere from 83.5 to 85.5. And just seeing that and being able to take the best number with a spot I already thought was a little bit too high, it just made me like it even more. But the Cardinals are coming off a season where they finished last in the NL Central, and I don't really think that was an aberration. I think this is not the expectation that they should finish last, but the expectation that they should be a very much underachieving team. Jeff, what did they do this offseason to make them all of a sudden be contending to get over 85 wins after finishing with 71? So what, you add Sonny Gray? All right, Sonny Gray can be solid, sure, but as your ace, is that the guy you really want? Probably not. Michaelis, talk about volatility. He certainly has it all the time. Kyle Gibson, older veteran pitcher, liable to giving up the deep ball a lot. Lance Lynn, who was great with the Rangers, had his moment with the Sox, then had nightmares with the Sox, was a very fun pitcher to fade. Kind of had some resurgence with the Dodgers, but I think that had to do more so with being around actual competition and just being in a better culture than what was present on the south side of Chicago here. And Steven Matz, yeah, you get the southpaw, but you know how Matz is. Not really someone who makes me go crazy and, wanting to back him and any given outing. And then offensively, yes, you have Goldie who can go off any given night. You have Arenado, but aside from that, you still have the same mediocre bunch. And the NL Central is going to be a crapshoot. It usually is. Like the Cubs, yeah, that'd probably be the team you'd expect to come out on top. No real value to do that. The Reds are going to be a better team. The Pirates are still going to stink, but they'll be better. Don't really have too much conviction with the Brewers, but they're always going to be a competitive bunch in themselves. And again, it's just like you brought in these veterans to this pitching staff, and it's nothing that moves the needle, nothing that I think props you up in a positive light. And yeah, it's just all of that. And it being at 85, like if this was at about, say, 82.5, that would be fine. I wouldn't touch it. 85.5 is a bit too ambitious with this Cardinals team that in the past has always been in contention. But I think this is going to be, from last year to going forward, the start of a consistent regression with this unit that is getting older. You added older pieces and none that are going to be all too beneficial. So under 85.5 for St. Louis. And then you mentioned the Rangers draft. Under 89.5. First things first, I mean, Max Scherzer going to be missing a chunk of this season, right? He's going to be undergoing arm surgery it's a herniated disc in his back. That was one prior, but he was so great to this team in a pitching staff that was, we talk about volatility. My goodness, this is exactly what they were last year. And they caught the hot streak at the right time. That's usually what happens in the postseason. But don't forget their bullpen was terrible last year. I mean, 4.77 ERA, 4.45 FIP out of their bullpen. Yes, they performed again when they needed to, but we're talking about 162 games here in a division that is really going to be tough and has the potential to see a new top of it with the Seattle Mariners, who I got to bet on. We could get into that later, but the Astros are still going to be a great squad. I don't think they'll be as good, but they still have all the talent in the world. The Rangers, Mariners, all button heads. A's and Angels, you think the A's will be a little bit better, but obviously not in the conversation. So my point is the Mariners, I think, are going to be a lot better team and take some of those wins away from the Rangers, who I believe overachieved with their pitching staff. The offense is very, very lethal, and that's going to be what carries them. But how often are they going to be able to carry the inconsistencies of the starting rotation of Eovaldi, of Gray, of Haney, Dunning, Brett? I mean, just guys that really did not put up the best of numbers. And just because they won the World Series, we're supposed to expect that that's going to be replicated? No, baseball is one of the hardest sports to do that because of how much strain it puts on you. And when you don't have a really strong rotation, which is one of the most crucial things you need, I think that's going to impact you in a tough division negatively. So 89.5, obviously going to be propped up because they're champions. I'll take the under on that, and I'll fade everybody's World Series champion from last year.
Danny, let's stick right there with that train of thought. You were talking about the Seattle Mariners, and you've made a couple future bets on them already.
Yeah, look at this pitching staff. I mean, this is arguably one of the best in baseball with Castillo, with Kirby. You got Logan Gilbert, Bryce Miller, and then you got Wu, who's an emerging young guy who had some good outings last year. And just not to mention their offense that does have a lot of these weapons. They just never really click simultaneously throughout that rotation of their hitters. And that's what was so frustrating to watch with Seattle last year, is someone who did invest in them in the futures market that year too, because you're just waiting for them to pop up. You have so much young talent, but it never came to fruition. I think this is a year for the Mariners to have that. Your pitchers are getting more experience. They're still going to be absolutely dominant. I told you why I'm low on the Rangers. The Astros just getting older. Again, still going to be great, but not as good. This is the season for the Seattle Mariners to sneak in there. And I think it's a really good year, too, for Julio to be MVP. I think if you get him at double-digit odds or better, he could easily become the face of the league. Young, energetic power hitter, great in the outfield, too, charismatic. Him being the MVP and this team winning the division, I think that could sync up beautifully this year. And you know, the rest of the lineup, too. I mean, you bring in Raleigh, too, coming off a solid season, who they picked up. 353 WOBA, 130 weighted runs created plus to fill in the outfield. Garver in the DH spot, potentially coming off his second best season, 139 weighted runs created plus. Not amazing numbers, but enough to fill the void of some of the pieces you lost. Seattle, I took to win the division at about, I think it was plus 315. And then the World Series number was at 28-1 when I first looked. Unfortunately, didn't get it in time. So I only got 21-1. So I'd recommend a 20-1 play on them to win the World Series, or 3-1 or better for them to win the division. A lot of value in the Pacific Northwest this year.
All right, Danny, before we let you go here, let's get the favorite you like to win it all. And then a team that was in the World Series a year ago, still some pretty long odds as well. The two A's, the Arizona and Atlanta. What do you got on those two?
Yeah, so this, of course, is a chalkier play. Atlanta to win the World Series. And the reason I ended up pulling the trigger, though, because normally I wouldn't want to take a shorter team like that this far out, but they were being dealt at 6-1 plus 650 at several outlets here in Illinois. Not sure what you guys have posted up out by you, but this is a team coming off an amazing year where they had the best regular season record. Yes, you could call it choke in the playoffs. They fell short, whatever it may be. But they added to their already amazing roster with Ronaldo Lopez, Aaron Bummer, tough last name, tough coming from the White Sox. But again, some of these guys, when they lead the White Sox, usually end up in a little bit better spot. You get Kelnick, too, who, if he can get his back going, certainly going to be a plus. And you get Chris Sale from the Boston Red Sox, who you're essentially taking a flyer on. If he doesn't pan out, you know what? So be it. You still got Strider, you still got Fried, you got Morton, and you got Lopez, who can also hang in there. And if he works, you guys look like geniuses, and you got one of what used to be the better pitchers in Major League Baseball to pair that along with, I think, the best offense. Yes, the Dodgers up there as well, maybe outside of the Dodgers in baseball. Olsen, Albies, Riley, Arcia, Harris in the outfield. Great outfielder. What's this, his third year now? If he can finally get his constant streak of hitting going, this lineup is so deep. No team wants to get in front of him. And then Ozuna in the DH role, always a little bit of a wild card, but the power he presents is great to watch unfold too. this team has to be coming with a vengeance after their shortcomings in the postseason. And again, because you could get 6-1 or better, I thought they'd more be about like 4 plus 450, which I did see dealt at a lot of other books. So because of that price and just the pure electricity and power and pitching in this team, how can you ignore that price with the Braves? I do think they're the team to win it all this year.
Well, Danny, I will say with the Braves, again, and this is kind of just the way of the nature of the beast now with baseball playoffs being it was already a crapshoot to begin with. Now it's, I mean, the 6 seed's been in the World Series 2 years in a row in the NL. The Dodgers and the Braves won 100-plus back-to-back years, didn't even make it out of the division series. Is there any hesitation with betting a favorite here? Because, some people will be mad at me for saying this, but the NL playoffs the last 2 years have been a complete farce in comparison to what the regular season was supposed to produce in the playoffs.
Yeah, it really has. And again, we're looking in hindsight, but it's just because the regular season, it's such a big sample size that, yes, a lot of times these better teams are going to falter because you catch that lightning in a bottle for these underdog teams that you didn't expect it to happen. I mean, Arizona going as far as they did caught me way off guard. I was fading this team pretty often, and obviously it bit me in the butt because they just kept proving me wrong. But this, I like the fact that Atlanta not only just didn't make it to the World. I mean, they fell completely short. It really wasn't even close. So the team that maybe got too cocky, that thought they were all that was their wake-up call in between from when they won their last one, and they only got better from the pieces they brought on. So that's why I think this year is the year to put a little bit more stock into that. And you know what? If I'm sitting on this plus 650 price with Atlanta now, there's a team like Arizona who's kind of coming in hot. You're still going to get a pretty attractive price on that underdog because the expectations from the market still won't be there. And if you're a little timid, a little afraid, you could look to hedge off in that capacity, maybe a series price on the opposition, whatever it may be. But we know that Atlanta, when they make the playoffs, will not be at plus 650, presumably, barring any insane injuries from happening. And Jeff, really quick, I mean, speaking of that, Arizona doing it last year, you mentioned I had a bet on them. 40-1, I thought was just an insane price on them. I don't think that what happened in hindsight now, that what happened was a fluke. Yes, I was completely against them leading up into it, but you have a legit MVP contender in Corbin Carroll, who I also took a flyer on at about 22-1. This guy can get it done with stealing bases, with hitting, with fielding, and he was at one point in the conversation for MVP last year, and they made it that deep with returning players. Gurriel resigns. Pitching staff-wise, they still have Gallen and Kelly. If they can replicate what they were able to produce on the mound, still a very intimidating team now, knowing what they're capable of to go against. You'd wish for a little bit more depth out of that starting rotation, but perhaps some of those younger guys they brought up and we saw shine in the playoffs can now replicate that in the regular season. And outside of the Dodgers, Jeff, I mean, looking at this division, Padres, we probably presume are going to be worse this year, losing Juan Soto and just being a infuriating team with all the talent they have. The Giants add Snell. They got a great staff, but the hitting still causes me some reservations. The Rockies are a nightmare. So it's really the D-backs and the Dodgers, and Arizona with more of a wide open division because it's so top heavy will find a way in the wild card. You'll be sitting on a 40-1 ticket. The NL's not as intimidating aside from the Braves outside of the Dodgers. So yeah, I think we're going to get a way better, the price is going to be slashed in half. So we're going to be sitting on a better price. And the 83.5 wins, I think that's a reflection not only on people thinking they overperform, but just because of how great the Dodgers are going to be. But I don't value the rest of the teams in the division to be that studly. So 83.5 on the over win total, I'm also in on that. But really couldn't believe the 40-1 price on them to win the World Series in the Corbin Carroll at 22-1 price. I mean, again, you're buying low and potentially selling higher, riding this thing out. So I think a lot of that is available with this Diamondback squad.
He's Danny Burke, of course, burksbeat.com. Burke's Beats, the podcast as well. Article in the Sporting Tribune last week. You probably see more of that as well coming up this week as well. Danny, pleasure as always, man. Thanks for hanging with us today.
Yes, thank you guys as always. Hopefully our bets go a little bit better in around a Sweet 16.
Hopeful.
So best of luck to you both, and we'll talk to you guys again soon. Take care.
Absolutely. Danny Burke, everyone. We're not even going to break. We only have a few minutes left here. I'm going to take those off.
Me too.
But Here's all I'll tell you real quick. Going back to the Sweet 16 here. This story that's in the NBA is absolutely unbelievable. Just real quick, I'll bring it up. Jonte Porter, who is a two-way player who is on the Toronto Raptors right now, is under investigation by the NBA following multiple instances of betting irregularities over the past several months. Multiple sources told ESPN on Monday. This is from Woj and Windhorst, and I think Bobby Marks is the third one on it, involving Jonte Porter props on January 26th and March 20th, which was last week. I'll let you go read the article. If this is true, let's just say Jonte is getting will probably never be sitting on an NBA court again. Let's just go with that. It'll be the NBA will have to make an example of him, to put it politely. All right, going back to the Sweet 16 real quick, Alex. I know we're going to be head-to-head on Illinois and Iowa State. I already know we are. So we'll get that out of the way here. We'll talk about it more on Thursday on the day of, and, of course, throughout the week. We still have shows today and tomorrow as well before we get going on Thursday again. I'm going to give you the floor first because I know you're going to be on Iowa State here in this one, laying 2 against Illinois.
Well, I don't think I'm going to double down,
Okay.
and I don't think I'm going to touch Illinois. So I'm not going to hedge against my Cyclone bet here. But I mean, really, it's just offense versus defense, right? Illinois has struggled defensively all year long. They are out of the top 90 in efficiency. And then on the flip side, we know Iowa State has really struggled, but we've seen them play much better as of late. We saw it in the championship game against Houston, and now here in the tournament. So I'm not too worried. I think Iowa State will be able to handle their own here against Illinois. And I know they've done very well offensively, but I think exactly what Danny said is what Iowa State needs to do. Shut down Terrence Shannon. He had 11 points against Purdue. He was 0-4 from 3, and they lost 77-71. So I think Iowa State knows what they need to do and can double team him and shut him down. So that's where I am here with the Cyclones. But I think that number is right at 2 as well.
I didn't have a problem with the number at first. I do think Illinois should be favored. I think the wrong team is favored in this game. And, we're dealing with number 1 offense now in KenPom. Illinois is now number 1 in the country.
Which I don't really understand.
Well,
what did they do great looking down there? I mean, they aren't the best
I mean,
3-point shooting team, not the best 2-point percentage team.
I think it's, I will say, Alex, I do think it's, based off the numbers, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Just because of the efficiency numbers against Moorhead and Duquesne, it was enough to pop them up. Kentucky, of course, was not in the tournament for an extra game and did not have an efficient game against Oakland. And Alabama, who I think was ahead of them going into the weekend.
I think you're right.
Bama's down to 4. UConn's 2. And that's negligible. That's 0.4 difference. So by the end of the tournament, UConn will probably be the number 1 team in offense when it's all said and done, especially if Iowa State puts the clamps on Illinois, which could very easily happen. I think it's just the reason for that is 85 points at 64 possessions against Moorhead. That is unbelievably efficient. And then they actually outdid themselves against Duquesne with actually their second best offensive game of the year, points per possession, 1.44 points per possession against Duquesne.
Yeah.
Woo! That's electric from Illinois. So that's why they moved up because of just those 2 games were just potent offensively. Now, will they end up number 1? Maybe. If they win a national championship, they probably will.
Most definitely.
But I don't think Illinois will. But I will say, I do think they should be favored in this game. Iowa State's offense still scares me. It just scares me so much. Where, it was good against the Jackrabbits, and credit to them against the Jackrabbits because you were on 1st to 15. Actually, I was a little on 1st to 15 on South Dakota State too, and we thought, Jackrabbits have a pretty good offense.
Yeah,
they can do it. Iowa State scored 15 points in 3.5 minutes in that game, and then had one of their better offensive performances of the year in that first round game. But again, new site. Illinois' defense is mediocre, though. So we'll see. We're oppo on that one. I want to touch on one more before we go, if you're good with this.
Yes. Creighton
and Tennessee, which I think is the best game of this round. I think the 2 games in Detroit are actually the 2 best games in this round. Because Gonzaga, Purdue, I'll go into that in detail tomorrow because I'm a little perplexed on how that's getting bet right now.
I'm taking the points.
I 100% agree. The only concern with that is Gonzaga was so good on offense in those games against Kansas and McNeese. Can they do it again against Purdue? I think they can. Creighton and Tennessee, though, Alex, this is, like I said, I think this is the best game of the weekend. Really do. 3 on this game with Tennessee, 143.5. I'm going to lean Creighton just because I'm going to stick to my guns for what I had pre-tournament, where I have Creighton in the national championship game. I have Creighton to win this region as well. There's no reason for me to back down. But you and I kind of talked about this off the air the other day, where both of these teams had whoa, we were lucky to survive games. Tennessee made 2 threes against Texas and won. That normally does not happen in an NCAA tournament setting. Creighton, down 6 with 4 minutes to go, down 4 with 16 seconds to go, get the game to double overtime, and then hit them with a 15-0 run. Yep. They were lucky to survive in that game. But when those two things clash, it's a little bit hard, Alex, to figure out, all right, which team has the advantage here because they just survived we were supposed to lose that game.
I completely agree. This one's really tough to handicap here. I think that number is right, too. I probably will lean to the Blue Jays here as well. Another one that's really, Creighton is one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country, and then Tennessee, their defense is really good, and they keep proving that over and over. Also with Dalton Connect, though, because we talked about it, and we've talked about Rick Barnes, and not trusting him in the tournament. But now that they have Dalton Connect, it's kind of a different story, and that does make me a little bit nervous here. I think Tennessee could also run away with this one. We've seen the struggles with Creighton throughout the entire year. They've been inconsistent. They have some of the worst losses on their resume. But yeah, this is definitely one of the best games of the Sweet 16.
You might be right on the tournament. Period.
Yeah.
Like, this could end up being the best game of the whole tournament. There are a few candidates this week for the Sweet 16 that could end up being that. That means we're in pretty good shape with these games.
It does. It really does.
With Creighton, Tennessee, Illinois, Iowa State for sure. I think UNC, Alabama. If we said, hey, UNC, Alabama was a 90-88 classic, would you be shocked?
No.
I wouldn't be one way or another. And that doesn't even mention the dominance of the Connecticut Huskies that could just continue rolling as a big favorite against San Diego State. One note on that game before we get out of here. It is the largest travel differential in the history of the Sweet 16 for that game.
Wow.
UConn has to travel 85 miles from Storrs to Boston. San Diego State a shade over 3,000.
Wow.
Home court advantage much? A little bit for UConn. As we said, don't even have to get on a plane until the Final Four. And boy, they look dominant in Brooklyn in the first weekend against Stetson and Northwestern. All right. That's all we got for you. Alex is off tomorrow. She'll be back with Matt on Wednesday.
Yes.
I'll be here tomorrow. Loaded show. Dan Zimborski tomorrow will be with me along with Andy McNeil talking some hockey tomorrow.
Don't forget to give Andy some credit about the Nashville Predators.
Oh, I will. Don't worry. You're going to have to feed me some questions on the hockey, Alex. So we'll be in good shape. All right. We'll see you again tomorrow. Sports by the Book, South Point Studio.